Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to Power Pivot. What is Power Pivot? Power Pivot is a data analysis tool available in Microsoft Excel. Power Pivot is a data modeling technology that allows you to create data models, establish relationships, and create calculations. Power Pivot lets you work with large data sets, allows you to build extensive relationships, and create complex or simple calculations in a high performance environment. So that's it for this video on a quick introduction to Power Pivot. Thank you for watching. Bye for now. Hello and welcome to this video. Now that we've created a data model using Power Pivot, and this is being linked to a Power Query that we created earlier, it's time to start looking at what the data is actually telling us, and we're going to do this by using pivot tables. Let's take a look at the resources for this video lecture. I've got the resources saved in a folder on my desktop called resource files. I'm going to open it, and it's going to contain two files. The first is the EV sales. This is the original raw data that we connected to. This is a CSV file. And then I've got a file called pivot. It's important we have both files in the same directory because the bottom file pivot is going to reference the original raw data from the EV sales. The resources are going to be available for you to download under the resource area for this lecture. Please download it, save it onto your desktop so you can follow along with this lecture. Thank you. To begin, I'm going to double click to open up this second file called pivot. When the file opens, you might see this yellow warning here that says protected view. Just double click on this enable editing to clear that. This may launch a second file that's got the security warning here. Just click on the enable content. To create a pivot table, click on the insert option here from the menu bar and then select the option for pivot table. In the create a pivot table dialog box, make sure you check this radio button that says use this workbook's data model. We want to use the data model embedded in this workbook. Also, we need to choose where we want the pivot table report to be placed. We want it to be in a new worksheet, so make sure you've got the radio button next to the new worksheet checked. And when you're done, just click OK. Under the pivot table fields on the right here, you will see a few different options. The very first option here actually is the query that we created earlier, and then the other tables that follow are from the data model. I strongly suggest and advise that you use these because any modifications that you make to your input data using the query and then ultimately through using the Power Pivot will be reflected here because the Power Pivot is related to the query. So any input or modifications you make will filter through both of them. I'm going to start building the pivot table using some of the fields from the table. So from this table here, I'm going to select the transaction here, drag that and drop that under the rows section. So I've dropped the transaction here into the rows section here. The next field I want to use is the location type. So if you scroll right to the end, you'll see the location type. So make sure you select it and drag it and drop it on the columns. Because we want to create a count of these results, it doesn't really matter which field we use. So I'm going to select a field called the vehicle primary use. So I'm going to grab that and drop it under the values. And by doing that, the count should automatically appear. So you can see the counts have automatically appeared. The next thing I want to do is to clean up the table a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do to clean it up is to change the name of the tab. At the moment, it is saying sheet 2 on the bottom here. So I'm going to double click inside it and then give it a more appropriate name. So I've changed the name on the tab to pivot. The next thing I'm going to do is to change the format of the numbers. So I'm just going to click into the cell and select all the numbers. So what I want to do with these numbers here is to format it with a comma and also reduce the number of 0 decimal places. So while I've got the numbers highlighted, in the menu option here, select the comma. Okay, and that places a comma. And then we also want to reduce the decimal places to 0 decimals. So on the far right here, click on 0 and then click on 0 again. So you can see the numbers are well formatted. The next thing I want to do here is to hide any blank records for the location type. So as you can see, we haven't got that many. If there were a lot, I would have been concerned about the quality of the data, but we don't have that many, so I'm comfortable in hiding them. There are a few ways to hide information, but I found out that the most robust way of doing that is by clicking on the drop down option here next to column labels. So click on the drop down, and within the drop down menu, select label filters. Make sure you select does not equal, and then just click OK. And then you notice that all the blank values have now disappeared. The next thing I want to do is to add a filter to this table. Let's say that I am only concerned or interested about new electric vehicle sales rather than all the sales. To do that, I'm going to have to look for a field to add to my pivot table as a filter. So if I look under the pivot table fields here, there's a field here called new or used vehicle. So I'm going to click on it, drag that and drop that under the filter. So you can see now I've now created a filter using that field. And then if we go to column B, click on the drop down in column B, expand the all, click on the plus, and then select new, and then click OK. So what you're now looking at here is a summary of new electric vehicle sales per year separated between city and town for the King County of Washington. In this video, we created pivot table using some of the fields from our data model tables. Thank you for watching. Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, we are going to be performing some analysis using pivot charts. Pivot charts are used to provide visualization to data, making it more visually engaging. Pivot charts complement pivot tables. Let's take a look at the resources we will be using in this lecture. I've got it saved in a folder on my desktop called resource files. I'm going to open it, and it contains two files, one called charts and the other called EV sales. Both files will be available for download under the resource area for this lecture. Please download and save onto your desktop so you can follow along with the lecture. Thank you. I'm going to double click on this file called charts to open it up. When the file opens up, you may see this protected view warning. Just double click on this enable editing and that should clear that message. You may get another warning for security warning. Just click on this enable content and that should clear the warning. Make sure you are in the pivot worksheet. We are going to create a pivot chart from this pivot table. To begin, just click on any cell and then make sure you've got the pivot table analyzed selected here, and then click on pivot chart. When you try to create a pivot chart, it gives you by default a column, and there are other options here you can select for the type of chart. So on this occasion, I'm going to select area as the type of chart. And then I'm going to select the second option here that says stacked area. And I'm going to click OK. You can also resize the charts when you create them. You can see these little circles around it enables you to move the chart around. So just grab and you can just move and then resize the chart as you want. Just grab and then just resize to your taste. If we take a look at the chart, and if we look at the final year, which is for 2020, it looks a bit strange. So it appears that there was a sudden decrease in EV sales. EV basically stands for electric vehicle sales. So what the chart is telling us is that there's been a decrease in the sales for that year. This can be because at the time that the data was collected, it was early during the year 2020. So we didn't have a full data capture for that complete year. We could leave the data as it is, which is incomplete, but I think that the best thing to do if we want to reflect on the actual complete data for each year is to remove this year 2020 from the chart. Since the time the data was collected, there was only a brief snapshot of the early years, so the complete year was not captured. So the representation of that data in the chart is not exactly correct. So to deselect 2020 from the chart, here in the table under row labels, click on the drop down here. We'll wait for the drop down to populate. On the list here, I'm going to scroll down to 2020. Make sure you deselect the checkbox next to 2020 and click OK. And that should be removed. You can see 2020 has been removed from the chart. So what you can now see at a glance is the trend of new electric vehicle sales for the Kings County in Washington since 2010. As you can see in the chart, there has been a steady increase in sales pretty much every year up till the year 2018. there was a small decrease in sales in 2019. From the chart, we know that both the town and the city sales have increased quite a bit, but it's difficult to tell which one has increased the most over the other. We can change the chart type to a different type of chart that will give us a clear visual view of the town and city sales so that we know which one has increased the most. So inside the chart, I'm going to right click and then select change chart type, and then select the third option here, which says 100% stacked area. Select that and click on the OK button. So you can see right away by changing the type of chart, we have a clear distinction between the town and the city sales. So we can see clearly that there was more sales in the town than in the city. Looking at the chart, we can see that the percentage of new electric vehicle sales, that is as a percentage of the total in each year, has been relatively stable since the year 2012. However, there's been a slight increase in the city sales in recent years. At the moment, our pivot table is showing the raw sales figures, but we can represent these figures as percentages if we want to. So to do that, just click on any of the cells, right click. Once you right click on the cell, you see this menu option. There's an option for value field settings. Click on that. Next, click on this option that says show value as, and then click on the drop down arrow here. And what we want to do is select percentage of row total. So select that and click OK. And if you take a look at the pivot chart, you can see that the raw sales value have now been replaced with percentages. So that's it for this video. In this video, we created a pivot chart from an existing pivot table. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.